I've like a lot. I think all of our faiths and religions offer a lot of hope, and I'm eternally hopeful. Jesus says, he tells this beautiful story about the Good Samaritan, and he is asked by his disciples. He says, you know, love your neighbor as you love yourself, and they say, who is my neighbor? And basically in this parable, Jesus tells the story about a man who is a Samaritan, who is the other. And we are all charged with caring for not only ourselves and for those we love, but for the other. And we are to, I think the beauty, what I love about Jesus' commandment is that good news is that we are supposed to love ourselves and that we can. So relax and do it. And as you learn to love yourself, you're able to love others. So I think it's one of the most beautiful stories that I know that Jesus teaches us. We also have this Apostle Paul that writes a lot of letters, and I'm not sure he was expecting us to be reading them 2,000 years later, because he was writing to some of his congregations that maybe would change their ways. But he writes to this congregation in Philippi, and he says, do not worry about anything, but in everything, through prayer and supplication, let your requests be made known. Now we would say to God or to Jesus, but to your higher power, to your great spirit, to whomever you recognize as your sentient being. And lift that up and let it be. The Beatles wrote a song about that. Yes, they're great theologians. But the peace belongs to all of us. And it's in our sacred text, and it sounds like it's in everyone's sacred text. So I'm just very hopeful.
Okay, well, let's see. It's interesting how the question is phrased, how is your faith/religion? It's interesting, how do you see your religion, how do you see your belief system? I see it more as a faith, and we say in Islam that it is a way of life, and that in every aspect that, because there's something called ibadah in our faith, and it's worship, and that there's a tradition that even when you're having relations with your wife, that is a form of ibadah, it's a form of worship. Wow. And they know that, so they're asking, how is that a form of worship? And they asked him. And he said, because when you are doing it for the sake of your creator, that is, and you're not doing it in an appropriate way or unjust way, you know, it's for, so every action is a form of worship. And it's done for the right reason. Every action is a form of worship. In Islam, the view of nature, the human being, is very much balanced. On one hand, they're not inherently evil. They're not born evil. They are a tabula rasa, that saying tabula rasa, but they're an empty slate. You are what you make yourself. We believe everyone is born a Muslim, actually. We believe that every person is born with automatically that belief in the oneness of God, or you know, that soul is automatically connected, and that essentially they either revert or convert when they become older. But that every human being is a tabula rasa. Every human being is an empty slate, and thus the hope is every person is responsible for their action, and they have the hope of when they do right, and when they do good, when they work for something just, that you know, that they can achieve something great. And you know, lastly, that universally, that Islam is very much universal. It transcends all races and religions. That's one of the beauty I think I love about my faith, is that when I go to the mosque, and there's next to me a white guy, next to me is an African American, another one is a Pakistani, Indian, another one is African, and we have like this automatic in the heart. We automatically see each other. It's this love, you know, automatic, you know. And there is that beauty that it transcends race and ethnicity. And the hope is again that unity comes from that brotherhood of we work towards justice, and we are born free from any sin, or at least we believe, and that we work towards our life, and even to the last minute. All our sins and everything that we do that's wrong can be erased if, even at the last minute of our life, we come to that sincere realization, and that is the hope, you know, for individuals and
At the Network of Spiritual Progressives, there's two main thrusts of what we are working on to offer hope and healing. One of them is national, the Environmental and Social ESRA, Responsibility Amendment. It's an amendment to the Constitution that, bottom line, would say that corporations are not people. I don't know if you're aware of this, but right now, corporations have the rights of people, and those rights were recently given further power in the Supreme Court decision that happened not too long ago called Citizens United, which is that corporations are groups of citizens who are united and may spend their money however they want to. So they can spend $1 billion creating a smear movie on one campaign, candidate, and you can spend your $10 to give them $10. So that's where we just see this is not fair and equal. Corporations are not people. There's a wonderful movie called The Corporation, a documentary that was made. And the very interesting thing that it showed is that corporations are, when you analyze them psychologically, they are sociopathic, and they are required to be so because they must, by their charters, put profits above people. So if they say, you know what, we want to pay our workers a little bit, we want to pay them a living wage, we want to give them good benefits, and that costs the shareholders money, the shareholders can sue them. Or if they say, you know what, we want to clean up this big mess that we just made, and instead of trying to externalize the costs and make the government clean it up, we think we really should. We have a moral obligation. We made it, we should clean it up. If they do that, they can get sued by their shareholders. So this is where we're saying corporations are not people, and as long as they're seen as people, we actually cannot create a world that is based in love and kindness and generosity and peace. We cannot create that in this country because of the power that they have to shape our political system and the landscape on all of the different issues around the economy, the environment, education, etc. So that's where, in some ways, it really transcends politics. It's about the human beings and the kind of people we want to be and creating the kind of culture and civic life that we want to have. So that's the core piece of the Environmental and Social Responsibility Amendment. It's an amendment to the Constitution. The other core thrust of the Network of Spiritual Progressives in terms of the kind of hope for change and action for change in the world is what's called a global Marshall Plan. And that is basically saying that our security, our homeland security and our security as a planet is in generosity and love and not in profit and domination. And so what we want to do is to enact a global Marshall Plan, similar to the Marshall Plan that revived the economies of Europe after the war, to do this globally, where we would give a very small percentage of our gross domestic product to end the worst kinds of poverty around the world, and to provide water and food for everyone around the world. And we think that if people had water, food, schools, etc., they would be less likely to just say, I'm going to go kill everybody because I'm mad, because they would have something at stake. They would have a good life, and at least the basics. And that they would see that that's what the U.S. is doing. Instead of funding, dictatorships around the world, we could fund wells and schools and all that kind of thing. So this is the Global Marshall Plan, and it could be funded through a percentage of gross domestic product, or it could be funded through a 1% tax on international financial transactions of over $1 billion. And that would actually pay for it. So again, this is a way that we can really live our values. That's what it's about. It's not just saying, oh yes, I believe in love and kindness, and I'm going to be nice to you because you're sitting next to me. It's about, how about the world? What are we doing in the world? And can we really build a world of love and kindness and generosity and peace? And yes, we can, and here's how.